We're dead. All of us. Commander Zyrel's voice trembled, his insectoid mandibles clicking nervously. His bioluminescent eyes reflected the blood-red sky over Kyrex 4 as smoke billowed across the ruined horizon. Chitinous limbs twitched involuntarily, his once proud posture now slumped in despair. Across the battlefield, Zilth monstrosities towered over broken bodies. Mutated horrors stitched together from living flesh and biometal, they tore through the last remnants of the Galactic Alliance's defense. The air reeked of scorched ozone, acidic alien blood, and the charred remains of fallen soldiers. The ground, soaked with viscous fluids, squelched under Zyrel's feet as he stumbled backward. Not yet! The voice was calm. Cold. Controlled. Lena Monroe stood beside him, visor down, her face concealed behind a matte black combat helmet. Her armor, sleek and battle-worn, bore the insignia of Hell's specters, a ghostly skull wreathed in flames. 30 other figures, clad in the same death-black armor, moved silently behind her, their weapons humming with barely contained lethality. Zyrel blinked, his antennae twitching. Humans! The word dripped with both awe and dread. Move! Lena didn't wait for permission. She strode forward, boots crunching over debris as her squad advanced with surgical precision. The specters flowed like shadows, their movements fluid and coordinated, covering angles without a word. They didn't just fight wars. They ended them. A grotesque Zilth abomination, all serrated limbs and pulsating sacs of corrosive fluids, lunged from the smoke. Its maw gaped wide, dripping acidic saliva. Before Zyrel could react, Lena's rifle was already raised. One clean shot to its primary nerve cluster, and the creature collapsed in a twitching heap. Holy! Zyrel started, but Lena cut him off. Don't stare. Move! She pushed forward, eyes scanning every inch of the kill zone. The specters followed like wraiths, silent and deadly. Zyrel stumbled after them, his alien physiology barely keeping pace with their terrifying efficiency. Another monstrosity rose from the rubble, an amalgamation of flesh and metal, forearms flailing as it charged. Spectre Dagger 7 was already on it, vaulting over debris with ease. Plasma bolts punched through the creature's skull before it registered the threat. Contact neutralized. The voice crackled over comms, emotionless. Sector clear. Move up, Lena ordered, barely pausing as her team swept forward. Every motion was precise. Ruthless. Terrifyingly efficient. Zyrel struggled to keep up, his breath ragged. His unit, if you could call the scattered remnants that, had been decimated within minutes of contact. Zilth tactics weren't just brutal. They were biological terror incarnate. They didn't just kill. They corrupted. Flesh warped, minds dissolved, and soldiers became part of the enemy's ever-growing biomass. But these humans, they didn't falter. They didn't hesitate. They were surgical, relentless, and unshakable. Why are you here? Zyrel finally managed between breaths. Lena's response was curt. Because you lost. Her tone was devoid of judgment. Just fact. The Galactic Alliance had thrown everything at the Zilth and failed. Humanity had been called as a last resort, reluctantly. Desperation was a bitter pill, and now the taste lingered in every alien commander's mouth. A sudden screech pierced the air. Zilth's swarm drones descended in a writhing mass, claws clicking as they swarmed toward the squad. Lena didn't blink. Reaper on me! Sergeant Vic, Reaper! Hernandez broke from the formation, his heavy Gauss rifle whirring to life. The weapon coughed out a volley of hyper-accelerated slugs that tore through the swarm. Bodies exploded midair, showering the ground in acidic gore. Clear! Reaper's voice was steady, but there was a trace of grim satisfaction beneath it. Lena advanced again, her boots moving with unwavering purpose. What's the objective? Zyrel panted, struggling to match her pace. Securing the command node, Lena said without looking back. The Dominion signal relays are clustered there. Cut them off, and they lose control over the biohorrors. Zyrel blinked. That's impossible. We've tried. You tried to fight clean. Lena's voice was a blade. That's the problem. A silence fell between them. Zyrel's antennae drooped slightly, but he didn't argue. Deep down, he knew she was right. Another Zilth monstrosity loomed ahead, larger, faster, its neural implants visibly thrumming with bioelectric energy. Its eyes locked onto Lena. Adaptive model, she murmured, eyes narrowing. The thing was learning. Reaper, arc spread, she barked. Dagger 4, flank it. Clean shots only. On it, Cap. Reaper's weapon lit up again, laying down suppressive fire. Dagger 4 vanished into the smoke, circling wide. The monster charged, but Lena was faster. She pivoted, dodging its first swipe by a hair. Plasma scorched the air where she had stood. Now. Dagger 4 emerged from the smoke, plasma cutter humming as it sliced clean through the creature's exposed neural interface. The monster spasmed, limbs locking in place before collapsing like a marionette with severed strings. Target neutralized. Lena exhaled slowly. Zyrel's bioluminescent eyes dimmed with awe. Your tactics are effective, Lena finished, her tone devoid of pride. Not pretty. Not clean. But they work. Silence stretched between them as the squad regrouped. They had pushed forward, but the real fight was still ahead. How do you live with it? Zyrel asked quietly. Lena's visor tilted slightly toward him. For a brief moment, her voice softened. You don't. A heartbeat passed, and the moment was gone. Lena's head snapped forward, all business once again. Reaper. Dagger units. Move out. They pressed forward, a relentless tide of precision and brutality. Zyrel followed, his mind spinning. The battlefield had changed. The rules had changed. And the monsters wearing human faces were leading the charge. The war wasn't over. Not yet. But something told Zyrel that with Hell's specters on the field, the Zilth were about to learn that sometimes, the real monsters weren't born. They were made. The outpost was barely holding together. Twisted metal, broken defenses, and the stench of scorched flesh filled the air. Automated turrets sputtered as their energy cells depleted, and the perimeter shields flickered erratically, struggling to maintain integrity. The remnants of the Galactic Alliance's forces limped through makeshift trenches, their movements sluggish, their spirits shattered. Captain Lena Monroe stood at the center, eyes scanning the chaos with clinical detachment. Her helmet was off now, revealing a face etched with exhaustion but hardened by years of war. A streak of dried blood traced a line from her temple, but she barely noticed. She was too busy calculating the odds, grim as they were. This position's a death trap. Sergeant Vic, Reaper, Hernandez muttered, standing beside her. His Gauss rifle rested across his chest, but his eyes never stopped moving, always watching. We're sitting ducks if Sarkesh sends another wave. He will, Lena replied, her tone devoid of doubt. But he won't waste resources testing us. Not after what we just pulled off. Then what's his move? Lena's jaw clenched. He'll send something worse. Reaper didn't argue. They both knew the Zilth weren't the type to retreat or regroup. They adapted. They escalated. And the next wave wouldn't just be monsters. It would be a nightmare designed specifically to dismantle the humans who had defied them. Behind them, Commander Zyrel approached, his alien limbs moving with visible hesitation. His bioluminescent eyes dimmed in uncertainty as he glanced at the battered outpost. This is... He paused, searching for the right words. Unsustainable. Lena's gaze didn't shift. We know. Zyrel's mandibles clicked softly in a gesture of unease. Then why stay? This position is tactically indefensible. Fall back. Regroup. And give Zarkesh the high ground? Lena's voice was quiet but laced with steel. No. We hold. Zyrel's antennae drooped slightly. At what cost? Lena turned to face him, her eyes narrowing. Whatever it takes. Silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken tension. Zyrel's gaze flickered to the battlefield beyond, the smoldering wreckage, the fallen soldiers, the looming threat that hovered just out of sight. You humans! He trailed off, his tone more awe than accusation. We don't quit, Lena said softly, but the edge in her voice was unmistakable. Not when there's still something left to save. Even if it costs you everything? Zyrel's question was barely a whisper. Lena's expression hardened. Especially then. A sharp crackle echoed through her comms, breaking the moment. Cap, movement on the east ridge, came Daggerfor's voice. I don't like it. Feels wrong. Lena's jaw tightened. Define wrong. Can't get a visual. But whatever it is, it's not standard Zilth. Reaper, Lena said, her tone shifting instantly. On me. Reaper was already moving, his Gauss rifle primed. What are we looking at? Unknown. But it's not friendly. Lena motioned for Zyrel to stay put, but the alien commander followed a step behind anyway. His presence was a reminder that they weren't fighting this war alone, no matter how much it felt that way. They moved swiftly, navigating through the rubble toward the east ridge. The terrain was unforgiving, every step a reminder of the brutality that had unfolded here. Dagger 4 report. Still nothing, came the response, tension thick in the soldier's voice. But I swear, Cap, it's out there. Watching. Lena didn't like that. The Zilth weren't subtle. They didn't stalk. They overwhelmed. If something was watching, it was planning. And that meant it was worse than anything they'd faced so far. Reaper, sweep pattern, Lena murmured. Reaper adjusted his stance, his weapon shifting into scanning mode. His visor flickered as thermal and EM signatures filled his display. I've got. He paused, frowning. Shit. Lena didn't ask. She saw it a moment later. A ripple in the air. Barely perceptible, but there. Movement without form. Light bending unnaturally. Cloaked unit, Lena muttered, her heart pounding faster now. Adaptive, Reaper confirmed grimly. Learning from us. The Zilth were evolving again. Adjusting to human tactics. And if they were deploying stealth tech, it meant they were preparing for something worse than a frontal assault. Switch to thermal, Lena ordered, her voice calm but urgent. Her visor adjusted instantly, and there it was. A shifting mass of heat signatures, circling them like a predator sizing up its prey. Multiple contacts, Reaper murmured. Fast. Dagger 4, fall back. Now. Already moving, Cap. Lena's mind raced. The Zilth weren't just adapting. They were baiting them. Testing their limits. And if they were willing to use stealth, it meant they were preparing for something far more dangerous. They're learning, Zyrel murmured, his voice tight with dread. They always do, Lena replied. But so do we. Orders, Cap? Reaper's voice was steady, but the underlying tension was palpable. Lena's eyes locked on the shifting heat signatures. We don't let them leave. Engage? Eliminate. Reaper didn't hesitate. Copy that. The world erupted in chaos. Plasma bolts lit up the night, streaking through the air as Hell's specters engaged with ruthless efficiency. The cloaked units were fast, darting and weaving like living shadows, but they weren't fast enough. Lena's rifle spat fire, her shots calculated and precise. One target dropped, its form flickering into view as it crumpled to the ground. Another fell a moment later, its stealth tech failing under concentrated fire. Dagger 4 status? Clear. For now. Lena's jaw tightened. For now wasn't good enough. Reaper stepped beside her, visor scanning the battlefield. They're probing us. Yeah. Lena's voice was grim. And they're learning too damn fast. What's the call? Lena's eyes narrowed. We don't wait for the next move. Reaper's smile was grim. Good. I was getting bored. Lena's comm buzzed with an incoming signal. Marok's on the line, Dagger 3 reported. He wants a status update. Lena exhaled slowly. Patch him through. A moment later, General Marok's gravelly voice filled her comm. Monroe. I see you're still alive. For now, Lena replied. What do you need? Confirmation. Marok's tone was cold. What are you doing, Captain? Lena's lips pressed into a thin line. Winning. A heavy pause. At what cost? Lena's gaze hardened as she watched her squad secure the perimeter. Whatever it takes, she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. Marok's silence spoke volumes. We hold the line, Lena said softly, eyes narrowing as she stared into the smoke-filled horizon where another threat was undoubtedly brewing. No matter what. The line went dead. But Lena didn't need confirmation. She already knew what came next. And she was ready. The outpost was too quiet. Too still. Lena Monroe stood at the edge of the perimeter, her eyes locked on the horizon. Smoke still lingered, thick and acrid, hanging in the air like a reminder of everything that had burned. The distant hum of Zilth biomachines echoed faintly, but they weren't advancing. Not yet. They're waiting, Reaper murmured beside her, his Gauss rifle resting against his shoulder, but his eyes never left the battlefield. Testing us. Seeing how we respond. They're learning, Lena replied softly. And they're patient. Patience was new for the Zilth. They usually overwhelmed with brute force, flooding the field with biological horrors until their enemies drowned in corpses. But this was calculated. Deliberate. And that worried her more than any swarm ever could. Cap! Dagger 4's voice crackled through her calm, tension lacing every word. Recon's back. We've got a problem. Lena's pulse quickened. Report. Zilth Hive Spire. 10 clicks east. Massive energy signatures. Lena's jaw clenched. They're building something. Not building, Dagger 4 corrected grimly. Growing. Lena's stomach tightened. Zilth biotech didn't operate like human machinery. Their technology wasn't manufactured, it was bred. And if they were growing something this big, it wasn't just another wave of monstrosities. ETA? She asked, her voice steady despite the knot forming in her gut. 12 hours. Maybe less. Lena's mind was already racing. 12 hours wasn't enough time to prepare for whatever nightmare the Zilth were about to unleash. But it was enough time to do one thing. We hit them first, she said, her tone final. Reaper's grin was grim. I was hoping you'd say that. But Zyrel wasn't smiling. His insected limbs twitched, his bioluminescent eyes dimming with uncertainty. That's suicide, Monroe. A direct assault on a hive spire? We don't have a choice. Lena's gaze was hard, unyielding. If we wait, whatever they're growing will make this battlefield look like a picnic. Zyrel's mandibles clicked softly, a gesture of unease. You can't keep doing this. Lena's expression didn't change. Doing what? Pushing until there's nothing left. Zyrel's voice was softer now, but the weight of concern was heavy in it. Eventually, even you will break. Lena's eyes met his, and for a moment, something flickered there. A crack in the armor. But it was gone just as quickly. Not today! She turned away, the conversation over. Zyrel didn't push. He knew better. Dagger units. Lena spoke into her calm, her voice all business now. Prep for assault. We're burning that spire down. The acknowledgments came swiftly, but there was no hesitation. No questions. Hell's specters didn't need explanations. They followed because they trusted her. Because they knew she wouldn't ask for more than they could give. But she was starting to wonder how much more they had left. 2 hours later, they stood on the edge of hell. The hive spire loomed in the distance, a grotesque mass of pulsating flesh and biometal, tendrils stretching skyward like grasping fingers. It pulsed with life, emitting a low, throbbing hum that vibrated through the ground. The closer they got, the stronger the feeling of wrongness became. That thing's alive, Reaper muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. They all are, Lena replied, but even she felt the unease tightening in her chest. This one feels different. Reaper's tone was cautious now. Bigger. Smarter. Lena didn't argue. The hive spire was evolving. Adapting. Just like the Zilth. And that meant this wasn't just another target. This was something worse. Plan? Reaper asked, his tone grim. We go in fast, Lena said, eyes narrowing as she mapped out the assault in her mind. Hit the neural core before it wakes up. And if it's already awake? Lena's jaw clenched. Then we kill it anyway. They moved like shadows, advancing through the scorched terrain with silent precision. Hell's specters didn't need words. Every step, every movement was instinct. Training. They were ghosts, and the battlefield was their domain. Cap! Dagger 4's voice was a low whisper in her ear. I've got movement. Close. Lena's eyes flickered to her HUD. Heat signatures barely visible, but there. Surrounding them. Cloaked units, she murmured, her pulse quickening. Hold position. We take them first. The specters froze, blending into the terrain like living shadows. Seconds stretched into eternity. And then, the first Zil struck. Lena's rifle snapped up, a single shot piercing the creature's cloaking field and dropping it instantly. But they weren't alone. More shimmered into view, moving with terrifying speed. Contact! Reaper growled, his Gauss rifle roaring to life. The specters erupted into action. Plasma bolts and kinetic slugs filled the air, cutting down the advancing Zilth with ruthless efficiency. But these weren't the mindless monstrosities they were used to. These were smarter. Faster. Adaptive models? Lena muttered, her jaw tightening as she dropped another target. They're learning too damn fast. Reaper snarled, taking down 2 more with precise headshots. Lena's mind raced. If the Zilth were deploying adaptive units to guard the hive spire, that meant whatever was inside was far more dangerous than they'd anticipated. We can't hold this position. Zyrel's voice crackled through her calm. They'll overwhelm us. We're not holding, Lena snapped. We're pushing. Reaper's eyes flickered toward her, a hint of concern beneath the visor. You sure about that, Cap? No, Lena admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. But we don't have a choice. She moved first, her rifle cutting a path through the advancing Zilth. The specters followed without hesitation, their movements seamless, their aim deadly. But the Zilth weren't stopping. Push harder, Lena growled, her breath coming faster now. We're almost there. The hive spire loomed closer, its pulsating core glowing with sickly light. Target in sight, Reaper confirmed, his voice tight with focus. Take it, Lena ordered. Reaper's Gauss rifle roared, sending a hyper-accelerated slug straight into the core. The explosion was immediate. The spire convulsed, tendrils writhing as the core ruptured, spilling bioelectric energy in all directions. But it wasn't over. The ground beneath them shuddered violently as something massive stirred. Lena's eyes narrowed. Oh, hell! From the wreckage of the spire, something emerged. Massive. Twisted. A living nightmare. Cap? Reaper's voice was quiet, but there was an edge to it Lena had never heard before. I see it, she whispered. The thing stood taller than anything they'd faced before. Its form was an amalgamation of Zilth biotech and something worse. Intelligent. A predator that had been watching. Learning. Waiting. And now, it was awake. Lena's grip on her rifle tightened. We end this, she murmured. Reaper's reply was immediate. Hell yeah? And then the real fight began. The creature that emerged from the ruins of the hive spire wasn't just another Zilth abomination. It was something worse. Lena Monroe had seen nightmares before. She'd watched entire cities consumed by Zilth bioweapons, witnessed soldiers torn apart by creatures that should never have existed. But this? This was different. It stood nearly 3 stories tall, a grotesque fusion of biometal and organic tissue, pulsing with an eerie glow that made the air hum with energy. Its skin shimmered like liquid mercury, constantly shifting and adapting. The neural core they'd destroyed had been feeding this thing. That's not standard, Reaper muttered, his voice low and deadly calm. His Gauss rifle was already primed, tracking the creature's every movement. It's not supposed to be, Lena replied, her pulse pounding. This is something new. The creature's eyes, or what passed for them, locked onto Lena. A deep, guttural sound echoed from its core, vibrating through the ground like a distant earthquake. It wasn't just watching. It was analyzing. "It's scanning us," Zyrel whispered, his voice laced with dread. "Adapting." Lena's grip on her rifle tightened. "Then we don't give it time." "Orders, Cap?" Reaper's tone was steady, but she heard the tension beneath it. "Light it up." Reaper didn't hesitate. His Gauss rifle roared to life, hyper-accelerated slugs punching into the creature's mass. The impact was immediate, sending chunks of biometal and organic tissue flying. But the thing barely staggered. Its wounds sealed almost instantly, the damaged tissue regenerating at an alarming rate. "Oh, that's not fair," Reaper muttered. "Keep firing!" Lena barked, her own rifle joining the assault. Plasma bolts slammed into the creature, each shot precise, aimed at weak points that shouldn't have existed in something this massive. But nothing stuck. The damn thing was learning faster than they could adapt. "Dagger units, flank it!" Lena ordered, her mind racing for a solution. "Hit the joints!" "Slow it down!" The specters moved as one, spreading out and unloading everything they had. Plasma, Gauss rounds, even EMP charges. They threw everything at the monster. But it was like fighting smoke. Every hit was absorbed, analyzed, and countered. "This isn't working." Zyrel's voice crackled through her calm, panic creeping in. "We can't outgun it." "We're not trying to outgun it," Lena growled. "We're buying time." "For what?" Lena's eyes never left the creature. "For me to figure out how to kill it." The thing shifted, its form blurring for a moment before splitting into two distinct masses. One charged Reaper's position, the other surged toward Dagger 3's unit. "Shit!" Reaper cursed, diving behind a collapsed structure as the creature's tendrils lashed out, slicing through metal like paper. "Split fire! Focus on one!" Lena's command echoed through the comms. "We take them down one at a time." "Copy that," Reaper grunted, rolling into position and unloading another burst of Gauss rounds into the creature's core. Lena's mind was working at lightning speed, analyzing, calculating. The creature was adapting too quickly. Every tactic, every maneuver was absorbed and neutralized. Conventional weapons weren't going to cut it. "Zyrel," she snapped. "What's the biological limit on Zilth regeneration?" "It depends." Zyrel's voice was strained, his focus divided. "But even they can't regenerate indefinitely. Energy requirements are astronomical." Lena's eyes narrowed. "Then we burn it out." "How?" Reaper's voice crackled over the comm. "We're throwing everything we've got at it." "Not everything," Lena murmured, her mind latching onto a dangerous idea. "Reaper, how many thermal charges do we have left?" "4," Reaper replied instantly. "But they won't breach that thing's core." "They don't need to," Lena said, her eyes locked on the creature. "We don't hit the core. We hit the power conduits feeding it." Reaper's pause was brief. "That's a hell of a gamble, Cap." "All or nothing," Lena murmured. "Set the charges. Now." "On it." Reaper and Dagger units moved quickly, deploying the thermal charges along the ground where tendrils from the hive spire's remnants were still pulsing, feeding raw energy into the creature. "Charges set," Reaper reported. "Detonate on my mark." Lena's gaze locked onto the creature. "Get clear. Now." The specters pulled back, moving with practiced efficiency. But the creature wasn't stupid. It sensed the shift, its focus snapping toward the charges. "No, you don't," Lena muttered, raising her rifle. "Come on, you bastard! Look at me!" She fired a single shot. Dead center. The creature's head snapped toward her, its body tensing as it prepared to strike. "That's right," Lena murmured. "Come and get me." It moved faster than she anticipated, closing the distance in seconds. "Now!" Lena shouted. Reaper didn't hesitate. The charges detonated simultaneously, sending a wave of searing heat and kinetic force ripping through the ground. The energy conduits feeding the creature were severed, sending arcs of bioelectricity sparking through its form. The effect was immediate. The creature convulsed, its regeneration faltering as the surge of raw energy destabilized its neural core. "Hit it! Everything we've got!" Lena ordered, her voice a growl. The specters unleashed hell. Plasma, Gauss rounds, explosives, everything they had poured into the creature. This time, it didn't heal. The monstrous form writhed, its biometal shell cracking, splitting apart as the overload ravaged its core. Lena's rifle bucked in her hands, her focus razor sharp. "Go down," she murmured, her shots finding their mark again and again. And finally, it did. The creature collapsed, its massive frame crashing into the ground with a deafening thud. The pulsing glow that had radiated from its core flickered, and died. Silence followed. Lena's breath was ragged, her muscles screaming with exhaustion, but she didn't lower her weapon. "Confirm kill," she murmured, her eyes never leaving the corpse. "Dead?" Reaper's voice came through, laced with relief. "It's over." Lena exhaled slowly, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. "Cap." Zyrel's voice was soft, hesitant. "That was necessary." Lena cut him off, her tone leaving no room for argument. But even as the words left her lips, a cold knot twisted in her gut. They had won. But at what cost? And she wasn't sure how many more of these victories her squad, or her soul, could survive. Lena Monroe stood over the broken corpse of the Zilth monstrosity, her breathing uneven. The creature's remains oozed biofluid that hissed and bubbled where it touched the ground. The stench was thick and metallic, a sickly reminder that even in death, the Zilth refused to go quietly. But this one was different. Larger. Smarter. More dangerous than anything they'd faced before. "Status?" Her voice was low but carried enough authority to cut through the tense silence. "Perimeter's secure," Reaper responded, his Gauss rifle still aimed at the twitching remains. His stance was loose, but Lena knew better. He was ready to fire again at the slightest sign of movement. "Casualties?" "Minimal." Reaper's tone was grim. "But Dagger 3 took a hit. Jenkins didn't make it." Lena's jaw tightened. Jenkins had been young, eager. Too eager. She closed her eyes for a fraction of a second, long enough to acknowledge the loss but not long enough to let it consume her. "We'll mourn later." "We always do," Reaper murmured, but there was no bitterness. Just a grim acceptance. Lena took a steadying breath and turned to Zyrel, who stood a few steps back, his bioluminescent eyes flickering with a mixture of awe and unease. His mandibles clicked softly, a nervous tick she had learned to recognize. "Commander," she said, her tone softer but no less firm. "You still with us?" Zyrel blinked, as if snapping out of a daze. "Yes, Captain. I am." His voice trailed off as he glanced toward the remains of the creature. "I didn't think it was possible." "Neither did they," Lena muttered, her gaze hardening. "That's their mistake." Zyrel's mandibles clicked again, this time in what Lena had come to interpret as hesitant agreement. "You humans, you don't stop." Lena's expression didn't change. "Stopping gets you killed." Zyrel nodded slowly, but there was something in his eyes, something that hadn't been there before. Respect, perhaps? Or maybe something closer to fear. She couldn't blame him. The Spectres weren't heroes. They were survivors. And survival had a cost. "What now?" Zyrel asked quietly. Lena glanced at the horizon where the hive spire had once stood. The landscape was scorched, littered with debris and the remnants of the battle. But the silence that followed victory was never comforting. It was the kind of quiet that whispered promises of what came next. "We're not done," Lena said, her voice steady. "This was just the beginning." Reaper stepped closer, his eyes narrowing as he followed her gaze. "You think Zarkesh is still out there?" "I don't think," Lena replied. "I know. Supreme Overseer Zarkesh wasn't the type to abandon a battlefield. He was methodical. Cunning. And if the Zilth had invested this much in adapting to human tactics, then Zarkesh was somewhere close, watching, learning, and preparing for the next strike. "He's not done with us yet," Lena murmured. And I'm not done with him. So we go after him? Reaper's tone was hopeful, but there was a glint of something darker in his eyes, something Lena recognized all too well. Vengeance. We don't hunt him, Lena corrected, her tone colder now. We make him come to us. Reaper's eyebrows rose slightly. And how do we do that? Lena's lips curled into a grim smile. We give him a reason. Zyrel's antennae twitched in concern. Captain, Zarkesh won't make the same mistake twice. He'll adapt again. And if he's watching... He is, Lena said with certainty. But that's exactly what I'm counting on. You're baiting him. Zyrel realized, his tone filled with unease. That's... He struggled for the right word. Reckless. It's necessary. Lena's gaze was unwavering, her mind already 5 steps ahead. Zarkesh doesn't respect anything but power. He thinks we're unpredictable, dangerous, but still manageable. Her jaw clenched. We show him what happens when he underestimates us. And if he adapts faster than we can counter? Zyrel's voice was quieter now, almost pleading. Lena met his gaze, her expression hard as steel. Then we make damn sure he doesn't get the chance. The silence that followed was heavy, but there was no hesitation in her squad. The Spectres didn't need convincing. They trusted her. They followed because she had never led them wrong. And because they knew there was no turning back. We draw him out, Lena said, her mind already formulating a plan. We make him think he's got the upper hand. And when he takes the bait? Reaper's grin was dark, predatory. We end this. Hours passed. The Spectres fortified their position, turning the wreckage of the hive spire into a stronghold. Traps were set. Defensive lines reinforced. Every inch of the perimeter was a death trap waiting to spring. Lena stood at the center, overseeing the preparations with a practiced eye. But her mind was elsewhere, already planning for the moment Zarkesh showed his hand. He's coming, she murmured to herself. I know he is. Cap. Reaper's voice cut through her thoughts. Perimeter sensors just went live. Lena's heart pounded harder, but her expression remained neutral. Report. Multiple signatures. Big ones. Moving fast. Lena's eyes narrowed. Direction? East, Reaper replied, his tone laced with anticipation. They're coming straight for us. A grim smile touched Lena's lips. Good. She turned to her squad, her gaze sweeping over them. Positions. The Spectres moved like clockwork, each soldier falling into place without a word. Their weapons were ready. Their minds were clear. They had faced hell and survived. And now, they were ready to finish what they started. Zyrel, Lena said softly, her gaze shifting to the alien commander. You don't have to stay for this. Zyrel's eyes met hers, and for the first time, there was no hesitation. I'm not leaving. Lena gave a curt nod. Then let's end this. The ground trembled as the first wave of Zilth approached, their monstrous forms illuminated by the dim light of a dying sky. Here they come, Reaper murmured, his voice steady but laced with anticipation. Lena's eyes locked onto the approaching threat. Hold the line, she murmured, her tone a promise. No matter what. The Zilth surged forward. And Hell's Spectres stood ready. Light them up! The battlefield erupted once more, but this time, the Spectres weren't fighting for survival. They were fighting to end it. Once and for all.